You might be wondering, what can a bunch of ancient folk tales possibly teach us about modern leadership? Well, as it turns out, pretty much everything. Today, we're going to dive into some of the most enduring stories ever told, and we're going to uncover these timeless principles of conduct, community, and yes, leadership. What's just so remarkable is the consistency here. We're about to see how these universal truths about trust, about effort, about integrity are just as alive in tales that are thousands of years old as they are in the guiding principles of today's most successful global organizations. It's like we're discovering this built-in moral compass that humanity has always had. So, how are we going to connect the dots? Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll set our moral compass, then we'll build on the absolute foundation of integrity. From there, we'll see how small, consistent actions have this huge power, how that power can build stronger communities, and finally, we'll really grapple with the true meaning of what it means to serve. Okay, let's jump right in. Now, to make sense of these ancient stories in a modern world, we're going to need a map. And the one we'll be using is a fantastic one, the Core Values of Rotary International. They give us this really clear, practical framework to see how these fables apply right here, right now. So these 5 values right here, they're basically the skeleton for our entire discussion. And these aren't just, abstract ideas. They are active principles that really drive leadership and tough ethical decisions. We're going to use service, fellowship, diversity, integrity, and leadership as our guideposts on this journey. First things first, we have to start with the foundation, because honestly, without it, nothing else can stand. And that foundation is integrity. It's all about committing to high ethical standards and being accountable, especially when no one's watching or when it's really, really hard. Our first story is a Chinese folktale called The Empty Pot. And let me tell you, it is maybe the most profound test of character over results you will ever find. It all starts with an aging emperor who desperately needs to find an honest successor. So, a young boy named Ling gets one of these special seeds from the emperor. Now, Ling is a devoted gardener, and he pours his heart into it for a whole year, watering it, giving it sunlight, he even repots it in better soil. But despite all that effort, absolutely nothing grows. His pot is still just full of dirt. And here comes the brilliant reveal. When Ling, full of shame, presents his empty pot, the emperor just smiles. He announces to everyone that all the seeds he had handed out had been boiled. They could never have grown. See, the test wasn't about gardening at all. It was about integrity. And this is the crucial point, right? It's the contrast. While all the other kids secretly swapped their seeds to fake a beautiful flower and impress the emperor, Ling was the only one with the raw courage to show his failure. He chose truth over appearance, and in that moment, that is what made him a leader. Okay, so now let's flip the coin. If that's the reward for having integrity, what's the consequence for lacking it? Well, it's the complete and total destruction of trust. And nothing captures that better than Aesop's classic fable, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. You know the story. A bored shepherd boy tricks the nearby villagers again and again, yelling that a wolf is attacking just for a laugh. He completely wastes their goodwill. So when a real wolf finally shows up, his genuine cries for help are totally ignored. It's this brilliant illustration of how just a few small lies can shatter an entire social contract. Once your credibility is gone, it is almost impossible to get it back. All right, let's see how this builds. Once you have that foundation of integrity, the focus can shift. It's no longer just about protecting your character. It's about actively investing in your goals and in other people through small, consistent actions. Now, we all know this story, right? But if you look closer, it's about so much more than just slow and steady wins. It's really a study in strategy versus arrogance. The hare is so overconfident in his natural talent that he literally takes a nap in the middle of the race. He thinks confidence is the same thing as execution. It's not. The tortoise, on the other hand, he knows he can't compete with the hare on speed, so he doesn't even try. He just commits to his own process, one slow, steady step after another. That relentless consistency is what wins the day. He just keeps showing up. Now, what happens when you pair that kind of consistency with kindness? Well, you can create allies in the most surprising places. In this fable, a mighty lion catches a tiny mouse, but decides to spare its life, laughing at the idea that this little creature could ever possibly repay him. But of course, later on, the lion gets trapped in a hunter's net. And who comes to the rescue?
that same tiny mouse who gnaws through the ropes and sets him free. So the lesson isn't just be nice, it's about strategic humility. It shows that even small acts of kindness to people you might overlook can come back with powerful, reciprocal value. And this idea of reciprocal value leads us perfectly into our next section. How do all these individual acts of integrity and kindness come together to build strong communities? This is exactly where the values of service, fellowship, and diversity really come to life.
If you're looking for the gold standard of service, you have to turn to the parable of the Good Samaritan. What it does so well is define service not as a feeling or a nice thought, but as costly, sacrificial, actionable care for a complete stranger, someone who might even be considered an enemy. I mean, just look at the details. This makes service something you can actually measure. The Samaritan doesn't just offer a kind word and walk away. No. He uses his own expensive supplies, he gives up his own ride, he pays out of his own pocket for a room, and then he even guarantees he'll cover any future costs. That's a full-on assumption of responsibility.
So if that's what individual service looks like, how does that idea scale up to a whole community? Well, this story of a classroom career day quilt is just the perfect metaphor. All the students draw their dream jobs on fabric squares, but pretty soon some kids start questioning the less glamorous jobs like actuaries or garbage collectors. And the teacher brings it all together so brilliantly. She explains how every single job is essential. The baker needs the farmer, right? And they both need the garbage collector. A community isn't built from 100 identical pieces. Its strength, its real beauty, comes from the interdependence of all its diverse parts. This brings us to our final and maybe most complex thought for the day. We've seen service as this powerful, positive force. But what happens when that giving is taken to its absolute extreme, to the point of complete and total self-sacrifice? For this, we have to look at the giving tree. The tree gives absolutely everything to the boy, her apples, her branches, her entire trunk. And after she's just a stump, the story includes this crucial, heartbreaking line. This introduces the real tension of unsustainable service. It forces us to ask, is service truly noble if it completely destroys the one who is serving? For anyone in a leadership role, this is a critical warning about burnout. True service has to be sustainable. It requires setting boundaries so that you and your team can actually continue to give. So, after all that, where does this leave us? We've seen how integrity builds trust, how consistency drives results, and how diversity creates strength. But the common thread through every single story is action. Think about it. We saw powerful people walk right by the dying man on the road. The Samaritans stopped. We saw a mighty lion dismiss a tiny mouse, a mouse that would later save his life. So, considering the surprising power of that little mouse, let me ask you, what small act of kindness are you overlooking right now? What piece of your community's quilt are you maybe dismissing? Because that one small thing could be the most critical act of leadership your community needs.